Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. We are back. It is official. We have had reruns playing for, I want to say, potentially 4 weeks, give or take. Much needed break, and it's pretty official, y'all. I am now a state representative, proudly representing House District 107 in the areas of Mesquite, Pleasant Grove, Garland, and Far East Dallas. So that is now official. We had an incredible time on swearing-in day with friends and family that flew from all over the US. My grandmother came in from Mexico, and it was just a very emotional experience. If you want to check out my swearing in, I do have it up on my Instagram account, my personal Instagram, Luz Warrior. And if you want some on-the-job updates, please head over to Rep Linda Garcia on Instagram for political updates as Texas State Representative. This week on the podcast, we are going to get into some updates pertaining to the technology sector and how that is currently impacting the stock market. Since the beginning of December, we have not seen the market have much growth. Mid-December, it started to go down, and since mid-December, it has slowly started to recoup. I think that this is really important. I've talked about this multiple times on the podcast. We never, ever want to see the stock market have continuous, explosive growth. And we have seen the explosive growth take place in the months prior to December. So it's always good to have a cooling down period because what goes up must come down. It is important for the stock market to build a sense of stability, and continuous growth upward is zero stability. There's always opportunities in that case for it to come down. So the stock market coming down is positive. It gives us opportunities to continue our buy-in, to lower our dollar cost average. It is a positive space to be in. However, we do have a new catalyst as of today, January 22nd, and this catalyst is impacting the stock market, and I sort of feel a sense of euphoria that is emerging, and I want to talk about this. I think this catalyst is an important topic for us to tap into today, but before I get into that, it is very important for me to first and foremost acknowledge how challenging this past week has been to a lot of our community members as we watch President Trump sign executive order after executive order after executive order that is harmful to a lot of our community members. Harmful in the sense that while some of these executive orders are unconstitutional, they do stoke fear and they stoke confusion. And while we could have these types of conversations, and we should be having these types of conversations, I do have to remind myself that the intention of this podcast specifically is that we are better off financially healthy, that we are making sure that any opportunity that is accessible to the betterment of our homes financially, that we are participating in, because that is our personal right. And so I want to not place energy on all of the negative things that are taking place, but I want to be really productive in just reminding us that while there may be political conversations in this podcast, it is always going to be with the purpose of understanding how to benefit financially from this administration or any administration in the future. And that is my intention on a weekly basis with you every Friday for us to have productive conversations on what we can do to move our families forward and have accessibility to investing and understanding the economy and understanding how money works. Because for far too long, we have not only been kept out of these conversations, but we have not been participating. And so I do believe it is our responsibility to understand how all of this works. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with this week's episode. As I mentioned earlier, I am sensing some euphoria in the market. This really isn't hard to quantify. We just look at our indexes to get a sense of this. In the last 3 days, we have seen the S&P 500 as of right now, 12:53 p.m. on Wednesday, increase by 2.63%. We have seen the NASDAQ increase by 3.63%. This is 100% euphoric. As a reminder, to put all of this in perspective, we can expect the S&P 500 to grow anywhere from 5 to 8% on average on an annual basis. The NASDAQ to grow on average on an annual basis anywhere from 8 to 10%. And so you can see why these numbers are euphoric. However, I also want to remind us that in these last 2 years, we have had explosive growth in the market. What is causing a lot of this euphoria? That's very layered, but from my perspective and what I am observing and also facts is that technology is driving a lot of this upward momentum. And it is, I think, in part driven by the inauguration and having a lot of the tech founders in the audience. That always adds to market manipulation in that people are just euphoric in seeing these folks in this position and what it can actually contribute to the United States as a whole, and then overall how these companies stand to benefit. So there's that part there. There are also executive orders that can potentially improve the markets, although there is still a lot of fear surrounding tariffs and how this can stoke inflation, which then if inflation does increase, this could, make the market come tumbling down. But right now, the market is not worried about that. What it's primarily concerned with or caught up with is how these companies can stand to benefit from its close proximity to the president. This is obvious. And so I think it's going to be really important for me to be clear on something I mentioned earlier, which is market manipulation. The definition of market manipulation is the act of artificially influencing the supply or demand for a security to gain advantage. In this conversation, we are referencing the stock market specifically. It's, of course, illegal in most countries and can result in significant fines and penalties. But of course, it still happens. And it can happen very subtly, like having a press conference held by the President of the United States to talk about publicly traded companies. A couple examples of market manipulation is spreading false or misleading information about a company, such as rumors or overly optimistic projections. Another example is the pump and dump example. If you've taken Wealth Warrior, my course, then you would have heard I have an entire section on pump and dump. It is a trap, and typically newer investors get caught up in this trap. It is when mass communications are being used in order to promote a stock, and then the person promoting it sells it once the price reaches an artificial level. This is why it's not good for the stock market to have explosive growth, as I was mentioning earlier. It is better for it to have slow growth and build levels of stability and support in the market. What rises rapidly is always guaranteed to also come down rapidly. President Trump held a press conference on Tuesday, January 21st, where he announced a new AI infrastructure investment that is going to be backed by two American companies, Oracle and OpenAI, as well as a Japanese investment firm by the name of SoftBank. The AI infrastructure that these three companies are investing in is called Stargate. And it's important for us to note that Stargate was announced 10 months ago under the Biden administration. So this project has been well underway. Originally, it was an announcement that came from Microsoft and Oracle. Microsoft owns a very big portion of Oracle. Microsoft has sort of loosened its deal with OpenAI and has sort of fallen to the back through this process, where now we have SoftBank and Oracle who are stepping in to also invest into Stargate. I do want to read a quote from President Trump during his press conference. He says, "Leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate, so put that name down in your books because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that would invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States and move very, very quickly and moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately." So I first want to highlight that he says that this new American company was going to invest $500 billion in AI infrastructure. Everything I am reading, and I have looked at various sources, says that the deal is for $100 billion initial investment and could lead up to a $500 billion investment. So the deal is very similar as it was announced 10 months ago under the Biden administration, that they will make an initial investment of $100 billion. However, now that we have Oracle and SoftBank contributing, this potential investment can be up to $500 billion. But the way that Trump announced it makes it sound like it will be an immediate $500 billion investment. I'd also like to highlight that in his speech, he says, "Put that name in your books." Really quickly, I want to read off to you the definition of books when it comes to finance. In finance, books can refer to a company's financial records, a trader's positions, or a bank account's credit balance. Shortly after the press conference held by President Trump, OpenAI posted a tweet announcing the Stargate project, to which Elon Musk responded, "They don't actually have the money." Elon Musk also retweeted a tweet from Gavin Baker, who is a managing partner and chief investment officer at Atreides Management, where he says, "Stargate is a great name, but the $500 billion is a ridiculous number, and no one should take it seriously unless SoftBank is going to sell all of their BABA and ARM. BABA is the ticker symbol for Alibaba, which is the Chinese Amazon, and ARM is an American company that produces semiconductors." The tweet goes on to say how SoftBank has $38 billion in cash with $142 billion in debt. Oracle has $11 billion in cash with $88 billion in debt, and basically just goes on to prove that the money isn't really there. We will definitely link that tweet in our show notes if you want to read the entire perspective. Now, let's go back to Trump's speech during the press conference. He goes on to say that he wants to keep AI in this country. I do think that that is going to be very important for the United States of America. Technology is one of the biggest contributors to our economy. And unfortunately, in 2020, we learned the very challenging mistake that we made when we invented the chip and then handed over the chip to another country. We handed it over to Taiwan for them to produce, and they perfected it. And now we are feverishly trying to bring the chip back to the United States because of how dependent we have become on that technology. So I do think it is important for us to continue to nurture the growth of AI in our own country and not leave that growth dependent to other countries. The last part of Trump's speech during the press conference that I want to highlight because I feel it's very important for us to pay attention to is at the end where he says, "I'm going to help out a lot through emergency declarations because we have an emergency. We have to get the bill, so we have to produce a lot of electricity, and we'll make it possible for them to get that production done very easily at their own plants. If they want to build where they build at the plant, the AI plant, they'll build energy generation." I apologize if that was a little challenging to understand. He is not an easy person to quote, but from what I understood, I think what he is communicating is that he is going to declare an emergency so that he can invest money from the government into this initiative and that he will allow them to decide where they are going to build their plants. Now, as I mentioned before, this has already been in the works, and Stargate has partnered up with a data center here in Texas, specifically in Abilene, and they have already been working on the first Stargate data center. It is expected that 10 centers will be built in Abilene, and then they're looking to build 10 additional centers, and those will expand outside of Abilene but stay within Texas. I do want to express that I do believe that this initiative is extremely important. I am glad to see these types of initiatives taking place. It is important for us to understand the impact that technology has on the economy, and we really need these types of initiatives right now. It's also equally important for me to highlight the exaggerations. If we scale this back from what Trump actually said and look at this deal as its original deal 10 months ago of a $100 billion investment, and we include these latest updates that were announced that now Oracle and SoftBank are stepping in to also become investors in the Stargate initiative, well, I guess we have another partner, which includes President Trump and the United States of America, that will also be adding to this initiative. Then I think that we can look at something very realistic with $100 billion investment to start. We have yet to see if they can make it to an investment that is worth $500 billion, and we have yet to see that this initiative will create 100,000 jobs. While we saw some growth in the market since Tuesday, the day after the inauguration, again, I do feel like this news just really set us off into euphoria. And I want to talk a little bit about how much these publicly traded companies have increased since this announcement. So in the last 2 days, we have had SoftBank increase 15.43%. We have had Oracle increase 13.29% and Microsoft increase 3.93%. Now, those are publicly traded companies. OpenAI is not a publicly traded company, but because the majority is owned by Microsoft, you can have exposure to OpenAI via an investment in Microsoft. And then, of course, I also want to address NVIDIA, because if this goes through as planned, one of the biggest winners in this area is going to be NVIDIA, who is an American chip maker and really stepped in to produce chips in the United States and help supply our demand. I hope that you found this week's episode useful. The intention here is to highlight some of the euphoria in the market and why that's currently taking place in the technology sector, while also highlighting when people use their power to make certain announcements and what that can cause in the market. So it's important for us as investors, while we see the market flying high, this isn't necessarily the time to start investing. It's definitely the time to pay attention. If you are already an investor in the businesses that we talked about today, congratulations. Just enjoy the growth that you are currently experiencing. And then when the market comes down, use that as opportunities to purchase more stock. As always, it's best to just be consistent in the market and invest, whether the market is up or whether the market is down. 10 years from now, it's honestly not going to matter whether you invested when the market was up or when the market was down. In all actuality, if you are a long-term investor, what is going to matter is that you actually invested and participated. I'm your host, Linda Garcia, and you're listening to Investies, a Cosmic Standard and In Luz We Trust production. A special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.